caused an internal displacement for people. So there were refugees who, in Syria, before we go into the external refugee problem, internal refugees, meaning your part of the country was bombed. It was bombed heavily by the regime because that's what they did. They basically took a barrel and just stuffed it with TNT and all different types of explosives and just threw it from a plane on top of a habited or place where people were living, civilized. You're talking schools, mosques, housing, whatever, and it would just explode. And I've been in a place I was living. I had to work in the oncology department for 2 months in a place that was being bombed. When the barrel fell, in the hospital there were no windows left in the hospital, and there was no point of putting up windows because they were going to be shattered the next day because when a barrel falls, it could be 5 kilometers away, and you would have no windows left on your door because a barrel. They're not throwing bombs; it's a barrel, a barrel that would just bring down a whole block of housing in one place. So people they would need to move. So this once 2,800 populated village turned into 16,000 within less than 2 months. We were cleaning out barns, taking cows out and putting people in. There was no place. My father had built a refrigerating facility right in front of our house, and we used to and it was empty because he had left, and it was just an empty piece of a building in front of. Over 10 families lived there, and there were no windows, there was no tiling on the floor, nothing. It was just this empty, and they would just put curtains between each family and live there, and it was just horrible. The number of people who were coming in, and the conditions which they were living in, and they had to go through. So being one of the few doctors in the region, because it's a village, so you can imagine it's not that highly condensed with physicians. So there was me, there was another, myself and a fellow resident in thoracic surgery, and 2 senior physicians, one a family physician and another cardiac surgeon. So we opened a small clinic, free clinic. We had a facility that was available to us, and in front of my house. Unfortunately, it was in front of my house. So, and we opened this just for the refugees, to take care of refugees. And this went on for at least 2 years, from 2011 to mid 2015. This is basically what we did every day. And people just kept on coming into the village because we were relatively at the time a very safe part of Syria. The reason being safe because we were so close to the Israeli border. So only UN vehicles are allowed in our place. We're used to seeing UN cars go through in and out because that's how it works. Usually, no other military vehicles are allowed in our part of the country because it's a UN resolution that happened at least 20 years ago. So we worked in that clinic for a couple of years. It was horrifying, basically, what we had to see, and the level of agony and suffering and poverty that we had to deal with, and the fact that I would have kids come. I remember a 10-year-old walking to the office at the clinic by himself, no shoes on his feet, and he just sat there. Usually 10-year-olds or 8-year-olds would come with their parents. He came alone. So I asked him, "So what can I do for you? Like, are you looking for someone?" He's like, "No, I need to talk to you. Aren't you a doctor?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. Let me come in." So I bring him in, and this is what he had to say. He said, "Well, I have night terrors. I'm waking up at night screaming, and my problem is that I'm waking up my younger sister. So I want you to give me something so I don't keep on waking up my younger sister because she's like 3 or 4 and I'm bothering her." So he wasn't even concerned with his own, the fact that he was having night terrors at the age of 10 for 5 to 6 months, continuously. He was carried, and in stories like that, like you'd have people come in with amputated limbs, people who were, kids who lost both parents and now were living with an older sibling or someone else. Families of 15 and 16, not because they had 15 and 16 kids, but because there's no one left to take care of these kids but themselves. It was just becoming worse and worse. Now, unfortunately, in 2013, someone had reported to an intelligence facility that kind of ran our part of the country that this clinic was aiding rebels for whatever reason that came out. So of course they came and they took me because it was in front of my house and I was with them. So I got to spend some time inside the intelligence facility. And going into that and walking out is like, it is literally being born again. Because I had accepted that I was going to die. Basically everyone else who'd done that, they started assassinating doctors in mid-2012. They assassinated 3 of my close friends. Like 3 people were killed on duty, like working in a hospital. I had someone who died in the emergency room. They walked in, they shot him in the emergency room for taking care of someone who walked in with a. He turned out to be a rebel, but as a physician, you don't really ask where you're coming from. You just look at the thing and you work with it, and then you can take care of the person if you have a problem with it. I had 3 friends who were killed, besides the friends who were taken into custody, taken into intelligence institutions, and now I was being, summoned for that, taken into that. So I thought this is probably going to be the end of it. Like, there's really the level of brutality and savagery that is practiced in these facilities is not. I won't bore you with it, and I won't go into it. It's not, but you have to understand that this is a political mentality that came from certain parts of the world and was being practiced in Syria that we were not accustomed to. Like, you can't imagine being in a place where no matter how badly how badly they treat you, they want you to see that this treatment is actually you should be thankful for it, because they're not treating you worse. So if you're kicked and beaten, tortured day and night, well, be very thankful that you're at least still alive, that we haven't killed you yet. Be very thankful for that. So that's what I was in a room maybe 4x4. There's 36 other inmates and 2 women. There was 2 women in the same room. One of them was over 60 years old. She was an elderly lady, and I'm pretty sure that I walked out of there and the people in there are better off dead. And that's coming from a physician. That's coming from someone who works as an occupation. We try to preserve life, and still the condition of these people were horrible. I was interrogated because of the facility and because of the clinic. And what happened at the end was they had something on someone who was related to me, and they wanted some information about it. And at one point, I decided that I wanted to live on. I didn't want to die here. Even though I would be more than happy to die because everyone else did, and it's a good cause to, if you're going to lose your life for something, lose it for something like that, for your own people, if we're doing the right thing. But I decided for some reason, it was just my son's first birthday. It was like 3 days away. So I was just thinking, like, you know what? I think I can push for this a bit. So I convinced them that I could get them information on this, because I found out that they were too stupid to know I had a Canadian passport. I was born here in 1985, but I didn't really live here for more than 4 or 5 years. But they didn't know that. And in Syria, if they take your identification card, you're good as gone. Like, it doesn't make a difference. They can bring you back in. Like, anyone will pick you up on any roadblock. Or you're gonna have to say living in the exact same, territory and since you're living there, it's easy for them to come and pick you up. So I convinced them that if they let me out, I would bring them information and come back and work for them and work with them. They let me go. I walked at night out of the facility. In the morning, I took my wife and kid, and we fled immediately the country to Lebanon. Probably the scariest hour and a half of my life was that journey from to the borders of Lebanon. Because now, if I was caught, it was no longer me being detained. Now they would take my wife and my kid. And I guess for anyone who, at that point where you realize that you've been given a responsibility by God to take care of someone else. It's no longer about you anymore. It's no longer your life. It's other people that you're responsible of their own safety. So it was probably the worst hour and a half and it's like something that comes out of a movie. We basically made it through the Lebanese border just before my name arrived at the border as someone to be detained immediately. Because as I was going through the border, the intelligence facility, the officers were at my house raiding it. They were in the house, kicking down the door, looking for me because I was a couple of hours late in making it back. So as I was going through Lebanon, they were looking for me, and they harassed a number of my family members because they couldn't find me, and they found out that I left the country. I stayed in Lebanon for a couple of days, and I moved to Jordan. I stayed there for about 3 to 4 months, trying to get my wife the status refugee status to be able to come to the country. And thankfully, in the end of mid-August 2013, I was able to make it over. I guess every day I wake up and I'm not sure did I make the right choice leaving the people behind, or should I have stayed there, worked, and kept on doing. To be honest, I didn't have the proper training to really help that well, so I wasn't. Every day it's a struggle. Like a refugee, when they come to a country, you have to understand it's a struggle every day. It's a question they ask themselves: should we have left? It's not. You can't live the country they left. You can't live there. No one would leave a country you could actually live in. If you're able to provide provide for yourself. Yeah, that's your culture, that's your place, you stay there. But if you leave, then you understand that they're leaving circumstances that are not, conditions you cannot live through. It's not, you cannot wake up every day to the sound of bombings and machine guns being, it's just not, it's not doable. And right now there's 100 different fighting militias, like you don't even know who's fighting anymore. I will clarify one thing though, because unfortunately this became the focus of mainstream media, which is ISIS. The weird thing about ISIS is that ISIS has existed since 2004, the year after the Americans went into Iraq. And they existed on a very, very slim, skinny strip on the western border of Iraq. Right? And they've been there ever since. But because, they just sat there, no one really cared about it. And then suddenly, after the Syrian revolution had started, and the regime and the rebels were fighting over the northern part of Syria, those parts became very weak. And just like the opportunistic fungi they are, they just moved into there's no one left there. There's no one to fight them back. So you just moved in. It's not really that they conquered or occupied. It's just there's no one left to claim the land, so they just claimed it for themselves. Now, how many of them are there? There's between 300,000 and 500,000 people that are part of ISIS out of the 1.7 billion Muslims on earth. How many of them are Syrian? Probably none. Syrian? No. The people who are with them are from different backgrounds. You're talking backgrounds from countries that were torn by war. So you're looking at people who come from Chechnya and Afghanistan and Somalia, the parts of the world that are really torn. They found there's some psychological thing, mentality that is attached to wanting to be with that group. But Syrians, not at all. I don't know a Syrian who's actually part of that group at all, and they never really made it to the southern part of Syria. Now, what hurts all Syrians is the level of attention this issue took from the media, in contrast to this Hitler-like figure, which is Bashar al-Assad killing his own people. Up to 2011, Syria was up there with Vietnam and North Korea in the least country that had people of its nationality outside of its borders. No Syrians really left Syria. There was no reason to leave Syria. You're talking, again, rooted into the land thousands of years. You don't leave your countries. Now we have the highest refugee number ever. Nothing even comes close to what's happening right now. Over 7 million displaced people around the world. And that is no longer the issue. The issue is this very small militant group that was funded in the 80s by the United States to fight the Soviet Union. They were funded by, it's not even coming from and now the whole concentration of, you have no idea how hurtful that is for someone like me. You don't understand how, for this to be the issue, for the focus and concentration of everyone to be on that, you don't understand what's happening in these facilities, of these intelligent, where people are being, beat to death, 50-year-old men. A guy in his 50s is screaming on the top of his lungs in pain, and the focus is on this very small group that's been there for over 10 years. They've been sitting there, but it just wasn't, for some reason, it didn't come to light at the time, and now this is the whole world is focused on that. Look at the fact that people are so scared and are so in pain that they're actually getting into the sea. An Arab getting into the sea is very rare. Arabs we don't like the sea. We live in the desert and that's where we stay. We don't go into the sea. For an Arab to get into a boat and go into the sea, then you have to understand that whatever's waiting for them in the sea is easier than whatever's waiting for them on the land. And these pictures of children that you see dead, there are thousands more who are floating around the Mediterranean Sea who have already perished and no one cares about. The countries that are surrounding won't accept Syrian refugees anymore. They don't want them. Whether it's the Arabic countries that are overrun by Syrian refugees, or the European countries that are on the eastern part of Europe that can't deal with these people anymore. The problem of the Syrian refugees externally has become, I think probably the blind spot of the world for today. And everyone's looking away from this tragedy. And yes, maybe bringing in refugees is helping it, but it's not solving the problem. They're still bombing. Every day they're still bombing. What broke my heart a couple of months ago is that they bombed my house finally, and they burned my whole library. It took me years to put these books together, like medical or political books, just accumulating. I had a complete wall of books burned to nothing is left of it. You know, when you look back at your countries being destroyed, like I can't even recognize my own, you know, my own backyard. Trees been burnt, like people have been burnt. The tragedy of what happened in Syria. History, when it's finally spoken from a historical narrative, is we're no longer living the time. We'll bring forward stories that, you know, people probably won't believe. The stories that will be told later on, people will look at, no, this is just an exaggeration. I'll tell you this: whatever you hear that happened in Syria, don't question it, because whatever you heard, worse has happened. Worse to people has occurred in the country. I really do think the effort of you guys thinking of helping Syrian families. I really do. I appreciate it beyond my ability to describe it in words. Any Syrian family, I swear, any Syrian family, no matter where they're living right now, they need help. There is no Syrian family right now. There is no that is not in need of a place to live, of some security and some sense of safety. I've been trying to get some help for my aunt and her two daughters and her husband. Her son was detained by the intelligence for about 8 months. He was a bit heftier than me. He walked out. He had lost about 30 kilos by the time he had walked out of the facility. Whatever money myself and my brothers had, we put together and we sent it to him to get him out of the country before they took him in again. And now he's struggling to find some status in Germany or in Sweden, and he hasn't been taken yet. The number of young men, I don't have any more people back home to go to. And even if I was to go back home today, I wouldn't find people to sit with. My friends don't exist anymore, my family doesn't exist there anymore. Everyone is scattered around Europe and different places of the world, besides those who are no longer with us anymore. I hope I was able to bring some light to what happened, what is happening right now. And this is an ongoing issue, and it's not done yet. And it's probably, and the way we look at it right now, this is going to keep on going for quite some time. Thank you so much for offering me, giving me some space to vent, I guess, to complain a bit of what's going on. And thank you for considering, helping out these families. I've been involved with the whole refugee, helping people into the country from Syria, and it's been a big ever since Trudeau has taken over the government or has become the prime minister. It's been much easier, and the paperwork is much less, and the timeline as far as how long it takes to bring families in has become much quicker. So within like a month or 2 months, you'll have the families. I'm sorry I can't stay till the end of the event. If any of you have any questions, and specific for me or about what I talked about in general, please feel